Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto was assigned to Asuma and Team 10. Mizuki never got to shoot his mouth off at Naruto the night he took the Scroll of Seals. Other than skipping a half-manic monologue from him, what exactly did this change for everyone's favorite blonde ninja? Who knows? Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 38, The Curse of Talent. After Naruto hashed out how to accurately summon something better than tadpoles the day after learning the jutsu for summoning, he went over to Shikamaru's house to find the Nara boy still a little banged up with bandages still adorning his torso, but fortunately he was in good enough condition to go walk with Naruto to check on Chuji, as their rotund friend had run aground of some foul luck in his own right during his last mission. It was good to know that there were others around that weren't receiving the full blessing of Kami's bounty as well, in a sort of sick way. Regardless, Naruto and Shikamaru were walking through the streets towards the hospital. It wasn't because Chuji was still in bad condition at all. As a matter of fact, Chuji was more or less cleared to go home by this point. The reason he was in the hospital was because when he did go home he was given a big meal by his family and overate to the point of landing himself back into the hospital again. The sun was looking like it was beginning to set on the early fall day in Konoha as the two walked through the streets, and the normally bustling paths had the populace dwindling as the people returned to their own homes for the evening. It was Shikamaru's kind of time of day if he were to be honest with himself. Naruto had his new goggles down over his eyes to protect them from the blinding sunset directly in his face, and Shikamaru just had his eyes closed altogether. Hey, Naruto could see for him. Why use his eyes when Naruto had a perfectly good pair already working for them both? So, Naruto said, acting nonchalant despite what he wanted to say. So, Shikamaru sounded as if he was being put under duress just by being forced to speak. Why say anything, Naruto? It was cool just walking down the street and staring at the back of his own eyelids. Hey, maybe he'd get a seeing eye dog. He liked not having to look at things and waste brain power scrutinizing everything on the roads. When Shikamaru didn't say anything further, Naruto took it upon himself to proceed with the conversation. So, are you taking the job to go train as a guard? He asked, actually getting Shikamaru to crack an eye to look over at him. I'm asking you 'cause I am. I'm going. Ero-sensei convinced me. Shikamaru nodded and sighed tiredly. Well, at least that means I didn't make the decision to go too for nothing. Because if you weren't going, I wasn't going to go. Someone's got to try to make sure you don't get nabbed by some crazy criminals that want your fuzzy little indigestion problem, even if it is the single most troublesome thing I've ever agreed to. That really meant a lot to Naruto. Usually people tried to distance themselves from him because of his little problem. It was rare to find people that actually wanted to watch his back because of it. He could count the number of stand-up people that would do such a thing on one hand. Thanks, Shika. That's really cool of you. Whatever. Don't thank me yet. You're the one telling Ino. What? Naruto replied with an owlish blinking of his eyes before reality set in on just what that implied. No. Fuck that, you tell Ino-chan. Make a clone and tell her. You don't even have to be there for it. You make a clone and tell her then, Mister, I have clones, and didn't he think to tell anyone about it? I can only make one. You only need one. The bickering between the two continued all the way into the hospital until they found the staff in a tizzy. Both boys looked around confusedly and went to the main desk to try and get some attention. Excuse me? Naruto asked the woman behind the counter, could you tell us where Akimichi Chuji's room is? The lady turned around from her rapid filing of reports and saw the two young Chunin looking at her in confusion as to what was going on. Oh, I'm sorry. Now's not really a good time. Uchiha Sasuke awoke from his coma and attacked several orderlies before breaking out of the hospital. What? Both Naruto and Shikamaru said simultaneously. Naruto could understand wanting to break out of the hospital, but injuring people just for that? That was a little much. It wasn't that long ago. The woman said with a frown on her face, no one knows where he went. It happened so fast he broke out and left without anyone touching him. Without even saying a word, Naruto shot a glance to Shikamaru, who didn't even need to look back to know that Naruto's eyes were boring into the side of his head. You seriously want to go do this? Let someone else handle it, someone like a Chun dash. Oh hell. It's our job though Shikamaru, so let's go. Naruto said, grabbing Shikamaru by the arm and dragging him out of the hospital to begin searching, though he had a tough time of it as Shikamaru had dug his feet into the ground outside to keep from being pulled. What are you doing? We're going to go by ourselves. Shikamaru questioned rhetorically, at least let's get someone that can track. We don't even know where he went. Your jutsu isn't good for distance searching, remember? That got Naruto to stop in his tracks and turn to Shikamaru slowly. Come on Shika. We're in a bit of a rush here. It'll have to do for now, won't it? What if Sasuke actually hurts someone? Or what if he had a head injury and it's messing with him? We know about it, so let's go get him. With that, Naruto took off down the path away from the hospital and jumped off onto a rooftop to begin searching above the walls that would disrupt the better range of his jutsu that he'd get on the ground. With a desperate groan, Shikamaru took off after him. I'm really not looking forward to going back to the hospital over this whole thing. Meanwhile, Hokage Tower, Hokage's office. What? Anko squawked out indignantly upon being told of the news from the Umbu who had entered the room and delivered news to her. Kakashi, and Hiruzen, he broke out. But he had enough sedatives in him to put down a bull elephant. The masked Umbu nodded and continued, on his escape from his wing of the hospital he injured several of the staff orderlies. None dead or severely hurt though, just a little banged up at most. He is still somewhere within the limits of Konohagakure as the guards on gate duty have tripled in response. Hiruzen nodded and turned his attention to Anko. Anko, how dangerous is Sasuke with the cursed seal of heaven? The purple-haired specialist shook her head. I couldn't tell you. I was angry, really angry, and I wanted to just fight something when I woke up from it. It went away after a while though. I never found anything to vent on, so I just tore apart what was left of the base I was in. That's all I remember, Hokage-sama. That wasn't particularly the answer that Hiruzen was looking for, but there was a call to make. Anko, I want you to mobilize a team to find Sasuke before he gets himself hurt or hurts someone else. If there are any available Inuzuka or Hyuga clan members in the village, you would do as you wish. Until further notice you have free reign to recruit. Anko nodded and left the office to get herself a team in a hurry. Kakashi stood there, more or less at attention, and that in of itself should have let one know of just how uncomfortable he was with not being out there himself. Kakashi. The way Kakashi's body tensed up waiting on his own order spoke volumes. Prepare the isolated room for Sasuke's sealing. His life is no longer in jeopardy from the physical effects of the seal. It is time to handle this once he is retrieved. I should be out there, Hokage-sama. Kakashi replied, chomping at the bit to be granted the right to go get his student. This is my responsibility. This happened on my watch. Any consequences should fall on my head and I should be the one out there to locate Sasuke. I understand, Kakashi. Believe me, I do. The age on Hiruzen's face shone through at that moment as he did everything but let out a sigh, but none of this was your fault. You were split up and separated in battle. This is not something you have to do on your own. You stress teamwork, well, this village is your team as well. Let others handle this for the time being and believe in your student. He won't succumb to Orochimaru's darkness. Anko didn't. Kakashi's single visible eye looked rather grim at the final analogy made by his Hokage. Sasuke has far more darkness of his own than Anko had. With Naruto and Shikamaru, Training Ground 44, Forest of Death. You're telling us he went in there? Shikamaru's voice couldn't have sounded any more disenfranchised at the moment. Are you sure you are not just smelling the wrong thing? Who goes into this place? Ever? For any reason at all? On the search around town for Sasuke, he and Naruto found Kiba and Akamaru and enlisted the help of 2 actual trackers so that he and Naruto didn't spend time chasing their own tails, no pun intended. This was much to Naruto's chagrin as it slighted his tracking skill, that he didn't technically have, but it was an extra set of hands and paws, so they went with it anyway and kept searching. This quickly led them to the current abnormally large and gated-off forest they were standing in front of. How a forest like that actually existed within Konoha's gates was beyond the trio of them, and how they had never been there before, but that didn't mean anything at that point in time. I don't know what you want me to say, Shikamaru. Kiba said with a deadpan look on his face. He's in there, unless someone cut him in half and threw part of him over that fence. but even then I'd smell that too. He's intact, he's in there, and his chakra smells pretty funky. Well, let's rock and roll then. Naruto said as he hit a switch that opened the nearest gate and motioned for the others to follow him. Come on guys, let's get a move on. This is just getting worse and worse all the time. Shikamaru muttered as he followed Kiba, Akamaru, and Naruto inside the large, foreboding-looking forest to begin searching for their wayward comrade. How did Sasuke just wake up and flip out anyway? Wasn't he in a coma or something? Who just wakes up from something like that and decides to go for a little jog? The trio managed to climb their way up into the branches of the massive trees that the forest held, and Kiba decided to comment, "Yeah, this is quite the little jog, isn't it?" He remarked idly, getting a bark from Akamaru as he did so. "Alright, follow me." Me and Akamaru are getting a good whiff now. The sheer amount of overgrowth was staggering. They couldn't even see the sun through the canopy. What that place needed was a good old-fashioned forest fire to clear some of that crap out of there, especially on the ground. It looked particularly nasty down there, and the animal life for the most part seemed none too friendly. Genin were not supposed to be allowed entry into that place without permission first, but Naruto and Shikamaru were Chunin and he was supposed to be with them. At least that was the excuse they were going to use if they got in trouble for going in there. Just like their academy delinquency days, only Chuji wasn't with them this time, having been stuck in the hospital. And instead of skipping school, they were running through a potentially deadly forest chasing after a comrade to figure out what was wrong with him. Whoa, check it out. Tigers. They're huge, and they're all looking right at us from down there. There sure are a lot of them. Yeah, this was a great idea. Konoha Hospital. Both Ino and Sakura walked through the halls of the hospital on the way to Sasuke's room, with Sakura wheeling an embarrassed Chuji around in a wheelchair. You seriously don't have to do this, Sakura. It's not like I'm here for an actual reason. Your doctor told you to relax. Sakura chided him, getting Chuji to stop disputing her assistance. It's not that far from your room to Sasuke-kun's either. None of us got to see each other before we were released. You were put back into the hospital and you haven't even seen him yet. It's good to know that my team wasn't the only ones that got their asses kicked recently. Ino said too cheerfully for the topic of her comment. That didn't sound very nice in hindsight, did it? She remarked after the fact, getting a shake of the head from both Sakura and Chuji. My bad. Why'd you decide to come anyway, Ino? Chuji asked as they all continued to proceed down the hall. I thought you didn't really like Sasuke the way that Sakura did anymore. So what's with visiting him in the hospital? Suspicion crept into Sakura as she narrowed her eyes at her newly reformed best friend. Hey, yeah. This isn't some plan to get to Sasuke-kun to nurse him back to health, is it? Because if it is, you can just sit back and watch. A shrug came from the blonde Yamanaka girl in response, not particularly rising to Sakura's suspicions. I don't know why I came. Forward here was going to go, and I don't know where Goldie-kun or Shika are, so I figured I'd go too. You're still my friend, Chuji. Sasuke is still from our grad class and he's a Chunin like the rest of my team, so why not? She kept hearing it, but she couldn't really believe it. Ino really wasn't that into Sasuke anymore. It was just hard for Sakura to wrap her mind around that the person she had split with years ago had given up on her entire reason for ending their friendship. Did splitting off into teams after graduation really change things that much? It was like there was something else attracting her attention entirely. Was it purely her training? Because the exams that Sakura had seen showed that Ino had picked up quite a few nasty tricks. She was supposed to be smart, so what wasn't she getting about the whole situation? Better not to look a gift horse in the mouth anyway. If Ino didn't like Sasuke like that any longer, it was all the better for her. No need to really wonder why. Okay. If you say so, but I still don't know what in the world happened to make you . Sakura stopped as they rounded a corner and saw the glass to an observation room broken and scattering the hallway floor, in the process of being cleaned. What happened here? She saw Kabuto as one of the people sweeping up the glass and decided to speak to him about it. Kabuto-san. What's going on? Upon seeing Sakura, Kabuto put on a strained smile. Oh. Well, your teammate had a bit of a freak out when he woke up from his coma. He took off from the hospital to who knows where. Sorry. What do you mean? He just freaked out and left. Chuji asked, standing up slowly from his wheelchair. Why would he freak out? He's back at home. He had to have known that after getting up. I don't know what to tell you guys. Kabuto said helplessly, I wasn't even on this floor when it happened, but I've been here for the whole aftermath. Sasuke beat up a couple of orderlies that tried to keep him from leaving, took out that window and just left. It was a shock to the systems of both Sakura and Choji. Sasuke didn't just freak out. Ever. Even when he was upset about something, he seemed in control for the most part. Slowly backtracking down the hall, Sakura eventually took off running. I've got to go find Kakashi-sensei. Choji, you should go back to bed. She finished with a shout as she ran past the personnel in the corridor. Wait. Sakura. Choji said, preparing to follow after her, but almost falling out on the floor if not for Ino supporting him and putting him back into his chair. Damn it. I'll never catch her like this. Ino, can you go get her and make sure everything's alright? Yeah. Ino assured him, making sure that the large young man was alright before heading off after Sakura. Don't worry about anything, Choji, everything's going to be fine. The frown on Choji's face as Ino ran away didn't seem too sure of that fact. With Naruto, Shikamaru, and Kiba, Training Ground 44, Forest of Death. They had been following after Sasuke's trail for well over an hour, and below they had been finding a trail of abject destruction. Vicious animals of all sorts found themselves deceased or severely wounded. Proud predators found themselves slinking off to hide somewhere like injured prey, and they weren't paying the three youngsters and small puppy moving in the trees above them any mind. Kiba took a sniff of the air and grimaced slightly. We're getting close. Really close. That's definitely Sasuke, man. He shook his head and spared a glance back at his two friends. What the hell is he on? It's got to be the strongest soldier pill or steroid on the market to be up and about after just waking up like that. Akamaru whined inside of Kiba's jacket. Are you kidding me, boy? It's that intense. What's intense? Naruto asked as they moved from branch to branch. This forest? Because yeah, I agree with the puppy. This place sucks. No, damn it. Kiba said, rolling his feral eyes at the young Jinchuriki's comment. Akamaru says that Sasuke's chakra is powerful. It's nasty, guys. That didn't sit easy with Shikamaru, who had gotten his fill of powerful chakra during the Chunin exams. How nasty. Real nasty. Confirmed Kiba before getting another telling whiff of the air. I think he stopped. It's time to find out what's up with the last Uchiha standing. The group sped up and started moving lower and lower to the ground. It didn't take too much longer for them to find the exact place they were looking for, with Sasuke standing on a rock in the middle of the river looking down at his reflection like he was Adonis seeing himself for the first time. He didn't even have a pair of sandals on his feet, and he didn't seem to care. Naruto, Shikamaru, and Kiba all looked at each other wondering just what Sasuke's deal was. He didn't even seem to notice that they were there. Either that or he just didn't care. Deciding to break the stillness of the situation, Naruto let out a whistle to get Sasuke's attention, not even getting him to turn towards them. Sasuke. Oi, what's going on? Why'd you hurt those people and leave the hospital? No response, he was still just looking down into the water with his back turned. So Kiba tried a more subtle approach. Yo prick. We've been chasing your ass all over this forest for the last 2 hours. What, did you flip out and flash back to the ass-kicking that landed you in the hospital in the first place? They were in the way. What? Shikamaru said, having barely heard Sasuke at all. Kiba had heard him and raised an eyebrow at what the dark-haired Chunin had uttered. They were what? They were in the way. Sasuke repeated louder this time. I didn't need to be in the hospital. I needed to get back to training. I can't let what happened on the last mission happen again, and I guess my body is agreeing with me, because I've never felt this good in my entire life. Not even when I awakened my Sharingan. He turned around to show that the entire left side of his body was covered in black flame-like markings. What do you guys think? I like the new look. Damn dude. Kiba exclaimed, taking a step back at the strange sight on Sasuke's body. You look horrific. That's like the regret tat from hell. What the fuck is that supposed to be? Sasuke looked at himself and at his own hands. I don't know honestly. I woke up and the first time I looked at myself I saw these markings. I feel stronger though. So much stronger. I think that if I had this during the Chunin exams I could have beaten few. He then looked up towards Naruto, then we could have fought and had our rematch the right way. Naruto. What do you think? He took a step forward and all three boys standing across from him felt quite a bit of malice emanating off of Sasuke. Naruto held his hands up and tried to reason with him, we can have a rematch Sasuke, no problem. But now's not really the time, don't you think? There's something wrong with you. Something just doesn't feel right. It's this power of mine, right? Sasuke said, grinning as he continued to step forward, it's not wrong. And if you asked me, now's the perfect time for a fight in my opinion. I'm ready to go, and it would be a great test for the both of us, unless you're scared. He knew that questioning Naruto's courage or resolve was the quickest way to get him into a conflict. I'm not scared of you, Sasuke. Naruto stepped forward with his hands clenched into fists. That's what I wanted to hear. That wasn't what Naruto, Kiba, or Shikamaru wanted to hear though. But Sasuke didn't want to seem to take no for an answer as he used absurd speed to get between all three of them, delivering a jumping split kick that knocked both Kiba and Shikamaru away from himself and Naruto in one move. Despite having watched Sasuke fight during the exams, they had no idea he was that much faster than what they had seen. Caught off guard, Naruto's eyes went wide as he got an up-close feel of Sasuke's malevolent chakra. Sasuke, this isn't Desh. You're not going to back down, are you, Naruto? Sasuke said, standing well within reaching distance of Naruto but staying his hand regardless. I've wanted a match with you ever since Nami no Kuni, and when you won the Chunin exam with your team and we both got promoted, that just made me want to fight you even more. I want to see if I couldn't have defeated you had we faced off instead. Kagemon no Jutsu, Shadow Posse Zion Jutsu. Sasuke jumped off of the ground away from Naruto to avoid the swift shadow snaking towards him on the ground from behind, taking refuge on the trunk of one of the massive trees the Forest of Death had to offer. Sasuke narrowed his eye at Shikamaru, Sharingan active but felt an instinct to dodge again. Gatsuaga, Fang passing Fang. A pair of drills that were a rapidly rotating Kiba and Akamaru flew at Sasuke, but he avoided them and they smashed large chunks of tree out of the trunk before they both landed on the ground with Kiba and Akamaru in a man-beast clone of Kiba staring Sasuke down. What's your problem? We came here to help you out and you attacked us. You're hurt. You need to be back in the hospital. Sasuke stood straight up and raised an eyebrow at the Inuzuka pair. Do I look like I need to be in the hospital? A mental hospital, yes. Kiba snapped at him, not taking kindly to being kicked as hard as he had been by Sasuke moments ago. We're your friends, dude. You don't drop kick friends in the chest. Sasuke, what about Sakura and Choji? Shikamaru shouted, trying to convince him to stop before things got out of hand. What would they think of you if they saw you now? What would you do if they were here? Would you just attack them too? That got Sasuke to turn towards the young genius with a scowl on his face. They're part of the reason I feel like I need this power. During the exams, for all the skill I'm supposed to have, I was still too weak to keep my team safe. And then on our first real mission out we were all almost killed. I was spared and I was given this power. By who? I'm not really sure, to be honest. Sasuke felt a bit of confusion as he had never thought of why exactly he had suddenly received so much power. It's not important. The source, it doesn't matter. But I need this. I need to see just how far this power can take me. I need to. He had to swallow a lump in his throat as he thought about who had coined the phrase he was going to utter next. I need to test the limits of my ability. He couldn't believe that he had just given the excuse his brother had given to him on why he had killed their entire clan. Naruto tilted his head in confusion as he tried to process what Sasuke had just said. What does that even mean? What does going off on villagers have to do with testing anyone's limits? Listen, I know about power that messes with your head. It screws up your point of view, and it's okay. You can control it, alright? Just, don't let it control you. Bad things happen when you do that. Naruto thought back to his own foolish thoughts and combat strategies, and that term was used loosely, when channeling the Kyuubi's chakra against Gaara and later Gurren, with worse results against the latter. Power controlling you. Sasuke said to himself as if it were some kind of foreign language he was trying to decipher. Yeah. Shikamaru said, seeing what Naruto was doing and trying to follow up, "This isn't you. Uchiha Sasuke might be a cold bastard and he might be one step above a functional mute for all intents and purposes, but he doesn't attack innocent people, he doesn't go on rampages through forests. It's not you. It's whatever power you've got now. Listen to Naruto, he knows a little something about this." Kiba's eyes panned towards Naruto when it had been brought up that the blonde knew something about strange powers. He most certainly did in the dog using ninja's mind. He had seen the last 2 rounds of the tournament and the abnormally intense orange chakra Naruto used. Was that what he was talking about? It had to have been. But for now they were proverbially talking Sasuke down from the ledge and he could sate that curiosity some other time. Besides, it seemed to be working anyway. "I don't want to fight you like this, Sasuke." Naruto continued on speaking, "Not because you are using this power. If you really want to fight like this when we do it again you can, but I'm not going to fight a guy that's letting a stupid seal tell him what to do." At first looking like a cornered animal when he began taking their words to mind, eventually Sasuke seemed to mellow out significantly and the marks on his body began to recede, centering towards a mark on the back of his left shoulder and neck area. He dropped to the ground on his knees, overtaken by the sudden loss of power that came with the cancelling of the seal on his body's effects. It made him feel somewhat emptier. The nightmares he had suffered while in a coma from the seal's application and the constant reassurances in the back of his mind that using the power as his own was the right thing to do didn't feel domestic. "What happened to me? I was knocked out in that forest at the border and then I woke up feeling better than ever." He ran his hand over his neck where he could feel the seal lightly burning his senses as if it was trying to coax him into using it again. "For all of your gifts and as hard as you train you'll never reach the level of a real shinobi the way you are now. Your village is soft, not treating you like the weapon you think you were trained to be. Look at us. Orochimaru-sama saw us and imparted us with this gift, our cursed seals." He could still see Seikon standing over him and gloating, as clear as day with similar marking all over his body as to what Sasuke had seen on himself. And therein lay the answer as to the origin and the source of his little gifting of power, Orochimaru. Sasuke said quietly as he fell forward, stopping himself from planting face first with his hands. Kiba and Naruto ran over and held Sasuke up with an arm around their necks to support him. "Told you that you were still injured, asshole," Kiba said with a toothy grin, Akamaru barking in a frantically happy manner as he ran circles around them. "Shut up," Sasuke replied, looking rather haggard with the seal burning his system. It was like an itch he needed to scratch to use it again. That kind of told him all he needed to know about it right there. Shikamaru sighed in relief at finding the trouble to be all over. Having Sasuke lose his shit and pick a meaningless fight was not very high up on his to-do list, not today, or on any day. "I think I should have stayed in the hospital longer. Then I wouldn't have to deal with this crap." "Oh whatever, Shika." Naruto rolled his eyes at his unmotivated teammate. "We did a good deed. Show some good cheer and be happy for once, dammit. We helped Sasuke team find himself again, right Sasuke? I wish I didn't need you to stand up right now, Dobe." "You're welcome." Naruto deadpanned before he saw Kiba looking around expectantly. "What's up?" Gesturing his head in a certain direction, Kiba answered him, "It looks like we don't have to drag this guy all the way back to the hospital. Check it out. 5, 4, 3, 2 dot. Before Kiba finished counting down, multiple blurs landed at the riverside that they were standing by. A team populated by Anko, Kiba's sister Hana, and what seemed to be 3 other Chunin. "What's up, sis?" he said with a grin, waving with his other hand to the young woman. "Kiba. I knew I smelled you in Akamaru," Hana said as her 3 ninkin sat on the haunches, panting and looking at the youngest people in the clearing. "You're not supposed to be in the forest of death without the permission from a superior." Kiba then pointed wordlessly at both Naruto and Shikamaru. Anko meanwhile stomped towards Naruto, Kiba, and Sasuke with a scowl on her face. "What the hell are you brats doing out here? Did you come out here to stop Kakashi's runt?" Both Kiba and Naruto looked at each other confusedly and turned back to Anko to nod. "Are you out of your minds chasing this guy into the forest of death?" "It's just Sasuke," Naruto said with a shrug. "It was a crazy Sasuke, but it's still Sasuke. Isn't it our job to deal with stuff like that in the village? Chunin were supposed to be for rudimentary village defense, right?" Or did he mess that part up when Shiho had driven tons of useless facts into his head earlier that year? Anko marched over to Sasuke and pulled his collar down to show the mark on Sasuke's neck. Do you see that? This thing was active when you got to him, wasn't it? It makes him into a killing machine. I already am a killing machine, Sasuke said in his more common tone of voice until Anko gave his collar a good shake for measure. Giving Sasuke a meaningful look, she returned to chastising the other youngsters. What would have happened if he didn't calm down? If he had been berserk, would you have been prepared to do whatever you had to in order to stop him? But he did calm down, Shikamaru disputed, lazily looking over at the purple-haired elder Kunoichi. So I don't really know what the problem is here. If we would have had to fight him, we would have fought him. But we didn't, so I don't see how this matters. Someone had to do something. We did. That's all. Hana shook her head with an amused smile on her face. Oh, you just wait. Mom's going to kick your ass when she gets home and I tell her what I caught up to you doing, Kiba. Kick my ass. Kiba bellowed indignantly. What the hell did I do wrong? He stood back up straight as Anko took Sasuke off of his and Naruto's hands, hoisting him over her back fireman's carry style. Where are you taking him? Anko stopped and turned back towards Naruto and Kiba before pointing at Sasuke, whom she was holding up. This brat, the cursed seal, is siphoning his chakra like a leech, trying to get him to use the seal's own power to make up for what he's losing. That's a big no-no. We can't have that happen, so we're taking him to get the influence of the seal cut off. Ha! Naruto said with a victorious fist pump. I knew it was a seal that did that to him. He then stopped and took a moment to think. Wait, there's a protocol for this happening? This happened to someone before. Yup. Turning towards Naruto, Anko pulled back the collar of her trench coat and her mesh bodysuit to show her own cursed seal that looked like Sasuke's. Naruto stared blankly, and Anko took that as him being more or less speechless. Well, good job I guess, maggots, she said before taking off with most of the team sans Hana, who stayed behind with the others. Naruto pointed at where Anko had been standing beforehand and looked at Hana. What is that seal supposed to be? I've never seen one like that before. It's nothing good, Hana assured him, crossing her arms over her chest and shaking her head. Sasuke has been branded by a very bad person that did the same thing to Anko a long time ago. You guys know about the ninja Orochimaru, don't you? He used to be one of the best that had ever come out of Konoha, then he defected. Well, when he left he took Anko with him under false pretenses and put the cursed seal of heaven on her. We got her back, but she couldn't remember just what had happened. That name kept coming up around Naruto. Orochimaru. First he had heard Jiraiya say it, then he had heard Tsunade say it. Was that guy really that much of a big deal? He had to be if he was Jiraiya's teammate, because both he and Tsunade were considered to be the best. Staying alive for 10 years outside of Konoha and still making moves against it had to hold some sort of weight on the matter as well. She's okay now, right? Kiba asked his sister. Anko, right? She's cool now, isn't she? Hana smiled at the empathy of her little brother and pushed the hood of his jacket back to ruffle his hair. Yes. Anko's been fine for a while. She never activates the cursed seal because using it more corrodes your mind. She wants to skin Orochimaru with the ring end of a kunai though, but that's just Anko being Anko. She let out a sigh. I think she'd be like that even if she never had the seal on her. Good. Kiba sounded relieved to hear that, because a woman that unlawfully fine shouldn't be afflicted by any nasty seal. A fist to the top of the head from Hana then sent Kiba right to the ground to eat dirt. You wish you looked that good, Kiba said with his face in the ground, only for Hana to step a foot on the back of his head and push his face further into the dirt. Every kunoichi I've ever seen looks good, Naruto commented idly, picking at his ear dismissively. Your sister is hot, Kiba. Don't mess with Hana like that. Hana stopped glowering down at Kiba and took her foot off of his head as she looked over at Naruto thankfully. Ah. That's so sweet, Naruto. You're a good kid. She looked down at Kiba, who was choking up pieces of dirt and getting his air back. You could learn how to speak to a lady from your friend. Kiba didn't respond as he kept on hacking until he hit his chest several times to clear his airways. He then froze up before robotically turning towards Naruto with a 1,000-yard stare. Did you just hit on my sister? An affronted-looking Naruto took offense to that and quickly defended himself. Who do you think I am? I didn't hit on Hana. If I wanted to hit on her I'd have said something stupid like Arrow-sensei. Something like, Hana, you're so pretty. I like a girl that's in touch with her instincts like you, it lets me know when she likes what I'm doing. Naruto then stuck his tongue out and gave a thumbs down, something lame like that. Stop hitting on Hana, you bastard. I'll kill you. I'm not hitting on Hana. Are you deaf or do you need Akamaru to bark it out for you, flea brain? Shikamaru, Hana, Akamaru, and Hana's three ninkin watched as Naruto and Kiba began angrily tussling on the forest floor for a while before Shikamaru let out a bored yawn. Well, this stopped being funny. I'm going home. He turned to Hana and pointed in a bunch of random directions. Which way's the fastest way out of here? Hana's attention stayed on her little brother and his Jinchuriki friend wrestling like 3-year-olds until they fell into the nearby river. At that point she turned to Shikamaru with a toothy grin. Well, you can just go back the way you came. It's 10 kilometers all around towards the center in any direction and we're only 5 km in at the farthest. The way you entered would be the fastest way. Come on. I'll show you. What about them? Asked Shikamaru, pointing at Naruto and Kiba as they took turns trying to drown each other, Kiba currently winning as Naruto took wise cracks at his hygiene practices. They're fine. Hana said with a dismissive wave. Kiba can find the fastest way out of here on his own. And if they don't get out before nighttime when the tigers come out to hunt, that's their problem. Let's go. She said, gesturing for him to follow before taking off into the trees. Shikamaru spared a glance towards Naruto and Kiba before following after Hana to find the way out of the forest. Well, what do you know, for once a woman wasn't the most troublesome person in the group. I heard that kid. Never mind. Konoha Hospital. This is gross. Sasuke said in minor complaint as he sat shirtless in a room, a ceiling circle on the floor around his body with kunai in its edges. The reason he had complaints was because on his body there were numerous kanji written on his body in blood. It wasn't his, he knew that much. He was pretty sure it wasn't Kakashi's either. Oh, it's not that bad, Sasuke. Kakashi said as he finished drawing the last symbol on Sasuke and walked over into his own prepared circle for the jutsu right behind Sasuke. Just think of them as temporary tattoos, made of blood. Whose blood? Meh, someone's. Sasuke frowned as Kakashi finished up his preparations for whatever this technique was going to do. What is she doing here? He asked, shooting his eyes towards Anko who was leaning against the wall observing the scene. I'm probably the first person you should be talking about when it comes to that death hickey on your neck. Anko responded with a smirk, so get used to little old Anko Uchiha kid. I'm going to be something like your parole officer when it comes to that seal. I don't think this is necessary. Sasuke defended, wishing he didn't need to stay statue still because the symbols painted onto him made him want to scratch. I'll just train and get control of the seal. That'll be that. Anko stared at Sasuke with a twitching eye, wishing that she could go over there and hit him one good time without messing Kakashi's entire jutsu up. You don't get control over the seal, fruitcake. The seal gets control of you. It makes you want to use it. That whole draining your chakra thing that's going on now, it's trying to force your body to keep it active for as long as possible after its awakening. The longer it's active, the more your mind starts getting screwed. It wants you to use it and rely on it as much as possible. Sasuke was a little insulted at what Anko was implying. It was like she was saying that his will and his mind weren't stable enough to handle any negative effects the seal may have had with it. So it would be a trump card. Big deal. Rock Lee's 8 gates probably did the same thing to his body that the seal would do to Sasuke's mind. It was a trade-off to use in a pinch, just like most other kinjutsu. You don't want to use this seal for anything, Sasuke. Kakashi said, as if he could read the boy's mind, its power is dark. Couldn't you feel it? Now I can't remove this seal. There are too many elements comprising the very core of it that are bonded to you. I can restrict its influence though. You can be normal and use chakra again without struggle after this, but your own will is the thing that will keep this seal intact over the other one. You have to resist the temptation to use the cursed seal. A nod came from Sasuke, but Anko could see it in his eyes that the message didn't really sink in. Hey Kakashi. This kid, he's not a genin anymore, right? This time a nod came from Kakashi. Well, how about I work with him for a while after this? Maybe she could convince him just how dark the seal really was. It was worth a shot. Orochimaru getting his claws into anyone else, especially one like Sasuke, was just unacceptable. At hearing the offer from Anko, Sasuke frowned visibly. Don't I get a choice in this? I'd rather not. I can train on my own and do missions with Team 7, same as always. This thing isn't a big deal at all. Yes it is, Sasuke. Kakashi thought as he slowly began making hand seals. You really need to understand this. His single visible eye panned towards Anko. Come on. Sell this one, Anko. He's not going to just accept it and I can't make him do it. Fine. Anko said, seeming to give up on her attempts to work with Sasuke. Sigh, and I needed a partner for some old-fashioned debaucherous missions too. She feigned dejection until something seemed to hit her like a flash of lightning. Oh wait. Hokage-sama gave me free rein to recruit anyone I wanted to until further notice. So you've been drafted, maggot. Sasuke's jaw was dropped as he looked over at Anko, frozen at having his autonomy taken from him to work with Anko for the time being, and didn't notice Kakashi going through a long set of hand seals. Don't worry, Sasuke. He said to his student, Anko's actually a sweet woman. Ah, thanks, Cyclops. Once you get past everything else. I still accept that as a compliment. Of course you do. Fujihoran, evil sealing method. With that, Kakashi finished his hand seals and pushed down on the focal point of where the binding seal was located, Sasuke's cursed seal, and all of the characters drawn on Sasuke's body seemed to recede into the cursed seal and form a red seal mark around it. This all caused a tremendous amount of pain to Sasuke and had the side effect of him blacking out, falling to the floor unconscious. With a sigh, Kakashi picked Sasuke up off of the ground to return him to a hospital bed until he woke up again. So when are you going to start working with him? He asked Anko as they walked towards the door to leave. The second he gets released. Anko responded brightly, who knows? Maybe having Mr. Personality here around yours truly will have some of my own precocious nature rub off on him a bit. So that was what she called it? I hope it'll be the other way around. Kakashi grumbled, letting Anko leave the room before him and shutting the door behind them. A few weeks later, gates of Konoha. Back home at last. Naruto said with a huge grin on his face as he jumped through the threshold of the large open gates as if they were a portal or something. That mission sucked. Trailing behind the kid with seemingly boundless energy were Kiba, Shino, and Hinata. Was it the most exciting mission? No. Shino said as they pulled a cart with multiple cages that had birds of all types in them, but the village needs a constant source of possible messenger birds. Hence it is necessary. Thank you, Shino. Naruto deadpanned, stopping his excitement at returning home to turn towards the bug-manipulating genin, because I didn't get that whole explanation from the guy that gave us this mission. He said sarcastically. I'm sure that you didn't. Shut up, Shino. The remark made by the losing side of an argument. Bad form, Naruto. Naruto stared at Shino, seeing if he could get Shino to blink first, but even if he could with those sunglasses, how would he have been able to tell? It was a moot point. Well, we finished the list off and that's all that matters, I guess. Where's Kurenye-sensei anyway? Why am I running this? She had her own stuff to deal with and couldn't go on a mission with us this time. Kiba said as they left the cart with shinobi that were supposed to be responsible for the aviary. She didn't tell, we didn't ask. We know better. So we grabbed you since you were the first shinin we know that we saw. Akamaru barked something to the contrary that got Kiba to snicker and pan his eyes momentarily to Hinata. Quiet boy. Bad joke. Whatever. Naruto said, waving the whole thing off before turning towards them. That was good work, you guys. Especially you, Hinata. He said, getting the girl to freeze at the complete attention he was paying her. Half the birds we found were because of you. It would have taken way more than 3 days even with all the clones I had if you didn't have the Byakugan. Averting her eyes away from Naruto to lessen some of the embarrassment she felt at getting brazenly complimented. Her red face contrasted her eyes greatly at the moment. It's not that big of a deal. Any Hyuga could have done it. Oh whatever, I'd much rather work with you than some other Hyuga ninja. You seriously need to give yourself more credit. Naruto said, arms crossed as he walked up to her and put a hand on her shoulder, getting her to freeze up. If you don't believe in yourself, then who else is gonna? Seeming to get a kick out of Hinata's reaction to physical contact with Naruto, Kiba spoke up, I don't know Naruto. She doesn't look very motivated. She looks like she needs a hug or something. Right, Hinata? He then caught an elbow from a silent Shino in the ribs. Ow, what? I'm helping. A strange request, but Naruto had heard weirder. He turned to Hinata with a raised eyebrow, wondering why the hell her face was so red for no reason, before shrugging as he didn't see anything wrong with it and pulling her into a one-armed hug. There you go. If you guys need some help again later, just come looking for me. I'll help you out whenever you need it until I have to leave. He said before making the ram seal and vanishing in style with a shunshin. Upon the loss of having Naruto to lean on, Hinata's eyes fluttered and she fell backwards only to be caught by Kiba and Shino. Seriously. You've got to break this little habit of yours. Kiba said, not that she could hear him at the moment though, the kid's as thick as a brick about stuff like this. Look who's talking. Shut up, Shino. You kept from going to that for as long as you could bear, didn't you? Picking with Kiba aside though, there was something that Naruto said that Shino's overanalyzing nature took notice of in regards to his last comment. I wonder what he meant when he spoke of having to leave? He couldn't have been given a different mission in the meantime, or he would have said something about it at least once over the course of 3 days. Maybe he was just overthinking it. Team 10 Training Ground. Shikamaru and Ino were seated under a tree in the shade as the sound of metal clashing sounded out from in front of them. So he's been doing this since before I got here? Shikamaru asked Ino as they both continued to watch. Ino merely nodded and continued to watch. Where'd the toad come from? He asked before noticing that there was another observer sitting with them. Oh, toads. On the ground next to them was a small orange toad wearing a blue jacket with purple markings around his eyes, mouth, and belly that was also watching the fight in front of them all. The kid out there is the new summoner. He summoned me, then he summoned Gamma when he put more power into it. In front of them, Gamma in samurai armor was in a fight with Naruto and his machete. Don't know why they're fighting though. Shikamaru didn't seem too stunned by the talking toad, but he expected Ino to have some kind of reaction. Instead she was simply steadily watching Naruto fight the toad at least 3 times his size. So the toad talks and you're just sitting there. I've been here for 3 hours before you showed up. Ino said, not taking her eyes off of the battle. I had my freakout, I trained for a bit, and now Gamekaki and me have come to an understanding. An understanding? I don't call her cutie, sweetheart, or anything like that, and she doesn't step on me or wring the oil out of my body. Sounds like Ino. Shikamaru said, getting a nod of agreement from Ino herself before he saw Naruto hack away at Gamma's samurai armor repeatedly. Since when could Naruto summon toads? I never saw him do that. A few weeks apparently. Ino said with a smile on her face, it's kind of cool, right? Naruto's got the contract to one of Konoha's 3 legendary summon animals. Apparently, Gamma got tired of being forced to block Naruto's manic machete strikes and used his tongue to grab him around the waist and chuck him at the tree that everyone else was sitting under. A screaming Naruto crashed into the tree trunk and landed on the ground before sitting up and shaking the cobwebs out of his head. I'm going to get you back for that, you know. He shouted at Gamma, who just croaked in a patronizing fashion and cancelled his own summoning to return home. I'm going to kick that thing's ass one of these days. You done? Ino remarked, standing over Naruto with a raised eyebrow and an amused look on her face. Because I'm done looking at you fight a big toad. It was just a spar. Naruto cracked his back and stood back up before he found that Gamekaki jumped onto the top of his head to lay in his hair. These toads are really tough. Well, not really Gamekaki, but all the other ones I've summoned so far. Hey boss, why don't you summon my pops? Gamekaki asked Naruto, poking him on the top of the head with a webbed finger. He's the boss of all the toads. You've got to meet him, he's the strongest. Really? Naruto said, sounding interested and rather curious. How much chakra do you think it would take to summon him then? Or do you even know in the first place? Gamekaki shrugged and Naruto responded in kind. You don't know much, do you? I'm still young. Cut me some slack here. Gamekaki stuck his long tongue out and dropped it in Naruto's face to mess with him, irritating him intentionally. How much chakra did it take you to summon Gamma? Because I guess you'd have to use at least that much, and then way more. What? I used a shit ton to summon Gamma. Naruto yelled at his diminutive summon partner, how much more do I freaking need? He then felt Ino wrap him over the back of the head, ow. What the hell? You have way more chakra. Ino informed him, patting him on his stomach, you've got all the chakra in the world. So put that big orange-red battery to use already and summon yourself a boss-level creature. I want to see it. Despite not saying anything, Shikamaru did too. Both he and Ino had been regaled by their parents in the past with tales of the most powerful summons that Konoha ever had. They hadn't seen any before, so if Naruto could bring one of them out, that was something he'd stay awake to see. The power of summoning creatures, used by those chosen by them to fight alongside them and engage in mortal combat with one's enemies, now officially the plaything of a team of 13-year-old ninja. You guys sure? Naruto said, rolling his shoulder out and preparing to dig deep. Shikamaru took a minute to think about it before dragging Naruto and Ino far away from that tree. He liked that spot and didn't want to see it get randomly destroyed the way he knew it was probably about to be. Yeah, now go ahead. Turn up the heat, Goldie-kun. Ino encouraged, rather excited at the prospect. Whatever. Naruto said before taking a minute to focus and pull out some of the Kyuubi's chakra. It took longer than he anticipated because the Biju was being a bastard and fighting him the whole way, but Naruto knew what the feeling was to use the chakra by now. As long as he had that, it didn't matter how long it took, he could draw upon it for one good burst to perform his summoning. Here goes nothing. He yelled as he bit his finger and made the necessary hand seals, Kuchi Yasei no Jutsu, summoning jutsu. A massive puff of smoke that covered the whole training field burst out from the point where Naruto slammed his hand down. Damn it, Jiraiya, why did you just summon me? Shouted a booming voice covered by the smoke, there isn't anything going on around here and I don't see any drink. Naruto, what did you just do? Hey Pops. Omaka, training day 5. This is boring, Neji. Naruto complained as he sat down on a stump in a forest, the same as Neji as the Hyuga had his eyes closed. When you said you wanted to train, I thought we were going to spar or something. This is one of my own training methods, Naruto. Neji replied calmly before opening his eyes with his Byakugan now active. I'm improving on my own perceptive ability with my Kekai Genkai. Naruto stared at him with squinted eyes as he deciphered what Neji was saying. So you're trying to see stuff better with your Byakugan. Well, that made sense. Naruto did the same thing with Shakura Hankyuti no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu, all the time. It was boring, and he was sure Neji knew that too, but apparently he was way more patient than the blonde. Exactly. With that, Naruto and Neji both sat in silence while Neji seemed to be looking around without even turning his head. Nearly 360 degrees of vision gave one that sort of advantage. If nothing else, it was nice that the animosity or the rivalry, whatever it was, between the two of them had dulled significantly after their scrap in Tetsu no Kuni. After returning, for some reason Neji seemed way more approachable and pleasant to be around. How many birds do you see? Neji said, catching Naruto's attention, with your jutsu. It's supposed to be a sensor jutsu first, isn't it? Use it and tell me how many birds you can feel in the vicinity. He then turned his Byakugan off so that he didn't take a flash of chakra to the eyes by accident. It seemed like a reasonable enough request, so Naruto let out a burst of chakra sonar style and the birds apparently felt it because they took off into the air, but Naruto had already counted the life forms that he had sensed. Meh, I got 8. It's 7. Neji disputed with a smirk. Hey, he could turn this into a competition if he wanted to. No, it's 8. You're missing 1 and you're supposed to be able to see through everything. How'd you miss that? Naruto asked, noticing Neji's pronounced frown at the question. Oh, we should leave too. Why? Because when you turned your Byakugan off I felt Lee coming from way back. So if you don't want to fight him let's go. Abruptly jumping up from their place on their stumps, Naruto and Neji both ran away as fast as they could. No offense to Lee, but the guy was just too extreme for them sometimes, and coming from Naruto that was really saying something. Eventually Lee came across the location that Naruto and Neji had been staying and looked around, seeing no sign of them. Oh ho. So it seems that both of my eternal rivals wish to test my ability to follow a trail. Very well then. If I cannot find Neji or Naruto-kun I will do 500 push-ups. And if I cannot do that, I will do 600 squats. And if I cannot do that dash. This continued on as Lee ran through the forest, looking for a way to track the two boys. Chapter 39, Strained Relations. In the first-hand experience of Team 10, over the course of their rookie year American Samoa Shinobi, it was clear from the things they'd seen or dealt with since graduating that no one ever explained to them exactly what they'd be facing out in the world itself. From the barbarous and treacherous nature of Mamakai Zabuza, to the litany of incredible Kekai Genkai of all kinds in the world, to demon containers such as Gara or Fu, the past year had been an internship in the insanity that truly sat out beyond the gates of Konoha, and within it as well on second thought. And another example of that insanity was right below the three youngsters, although this was insanity of their own creation, or at least the creation of one of them. "Oh my Kami," Ino said, on her knees as she felt around on the large, rusty red cranium of the toad that they were all sitting atop. From up there she could see all the way from the training field area of the village to the actual village portion of Konoha. It was quite a view. Goldie-kun, you might have overdone it a bit on this one. How? Naruto replied, almost as dumbfounded as the others at the sheer size of the toad he had called upon. You all said to summon the boss. I summoned him. You can't say anything now. It wasn't like the strongest toad summon was going to be Kichi's size or anything like that. Jiraiya, get out here. The titanic toad bellowed, with the sheer force of his voice on its own enough to knock Naruto and Shikamaru down to their backsides on the amphibian's head. I told you years ago that the next time you pulled a summon and dash on me as one of your stupid jokes I would squash you flat. Putting aside the thought that a summon and dash sounded like a completely awesome prank to pull if he could come up with a funny enough place to do it, Naruto felt it was time to introduce himself to this force of nature. Hey! Naruto shouted loudly to make sure he got the toad's attention, which he did when he found a long studded tongue completely engulf him as it wrapped around him, eventually holding him out in front of the large toad. Bleh. What's the big idea? Now that he was able to get a frontal view of the toad, Naruto saw that it wore a blue jacket vest and bandages around its torso and had red markings on its head and around its eyes. It also didn't seem too pleased to be holding onto Naruto. Not one bit. What does a kid like you think you're doing standing on my head? Oh. Naruto said lamely as he rubbed the back of his neck sheepishly. Well, when I summoned you, I don't really know where else I would have wound up. I mean, you're huge, sir. Maybe flattering the toad would keep Naruto from getting chucked from there to the Hokage Tower? The toad stared Naruto down before breaking out into laughter. Wahahaha. Ah, that's actually a good one for once, Jiraiya. I have to give you credit for this one, trying to get me to believe that a pipsqueak like this summoned me all on his own. Oi. I just haven't hit my growth spurt yet, you jerk. It's easy to talk about me being little when you're like 1,000,000 feet tall. Naruto snapped at the toad as he remained seated on its tongue lest he fall a very uncomfortable height of at least 10 stories to whatever lay below, and I did summon you. Ero-sensei isn't anywhere near here. I let you get away with standing on my head before, kid, but I won't have you lie to me. The oversized toad said gruffly, I'm Gamabunta, the chief toad of Mount Mayuboku. To think that I would be at the beck and call of someone like you is laughable. But I did summon you. Naruto stressed desperately, and my teammates are on your head too. You didn't say jack about that. What? Damn you to hell, Naruto. Shikamaru grumbled before noticing that Gamabunta had finally figured the presence of both him and Ino out. Hi. And if it actually matters, he really did summon you. Gamabunta was about to let the Chuchinin on his head have it until Gamekaki appeared from over Naruto's shoulder to add his own input. He really did summon you, Pops. This is the new guy, Naruto. I told him to do it so he could meet you. Now feeling self-conscious, Naruto started to sweat a bit when Gamabunta gave him a long, hard look. This was not the place to be, facing down a pissed-off, grumpy-looking toad summon that just so happened to be the boss. When he first signed the contract, Jiraiya didn't tell him that some of the toads could be pissy. Gama was totally cool. Gamekaki was a bit of a brat, but he was still a great guy/toad, and Gamekaki's brother Gamatatsu was a bit vacant, but he was nice. So what do you say? Naruto offered weakly, partners. He saw Gamabunta narrow his eyes at him and he quickly backtracked. I mean, you're the man. Big time toad boss, a number one. Still Gamabunta remained silent as he looked Naruto over. You're too young to share a drink with properly. But I suppose I could take you on as an underling anyway since Gamakaki seems to have taken a bit of a shine to you. Naruto took that moment to grin at the little orange toad on his shoulder and thanks for simply existing at that point in time. You can play with the new kid some other time, Gamakaki. I've been wondering where you've been disappearing to every now and again. Come on, we're going home. Fine. Gamakaki sounded rather depressed about having to leave, but when his dad was the boss and DWR fed him by 10,000 times there really wasn't much of a choice in the matter. I'll see you later, boss. We should hang out again soon. The small toad said before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Nodding to himself at seeing his son obey his orders, Gamabunta turned his attention back to Naruto. Don't summon me for anything troublesome in the future, and tell Jiraiya that we'll be having a talk in his choice of who signed the contract. Naruto nodded dumbly in response, much to Gamabunta's satisfaction. Good. And with that he also disappeared in a puff of smoke, albeit one much larger than the one Gamakaki left in. This had a few problems of its own. Namely that all of Team 10 were still at least 100 feet off of the ground with nothing underneath them. Troublesome. Team 10 all fell and wound up crashing through the treetops, more or less, luckily, hitting every branch on the way down with all three kids crash landing in a heap on the ground. Ow. Shikamaru said, body racked with pain. Ino, who landed in the most favorable manner of the three with the two boys to break a good portion of her fall, crawled away first. Ugh. Goldie-kun, your summons really don't treat you like with respect or anything. He was also 13 years old, so that might have had something to do with it as well. I'd settle for being equals, but no they don't really. Naruto said as Shikamaru got away from him after the fall. Thank goodness for the thick, leafy, bountiful trees of Konoha because that fall had the potential to be way worse than it actually was. How's that for a morning meeting? Crawling himself into a sitting position against the tree, Shikamaru picked some twigs and stray leaves from his hair and vest. Remind me to never sign a summon contract if that's what happens. He had no idea that summon creatures could be so moody. Fuck, that hurt. Instead of sitting down somewhere, Naruto rolled directly onto his stomach to get some relief after landing smack dab on his back. All of this summoning stuff is cool, but it's freaking hurting my kidneys. Seriously, Gamma threw him right against a tree earlier and he hit the sweet spot right against the tree trunk, and moments ago Ino landed on him with a knee or elbow or something with bone. He then grunted as he felt Ino lay across his back. Get off, Ino-chan. Go mess with Shikamaru. Kiss my ass. That stupid drop hurt. Ino whined, refusing to move from her place, and it's your fault, so deal with it, blonde teddy. She finished, smiling as she shut her eyes and seemed ready to take a nap on the spot. Seriously, get off. Trying to shake Ino off failed as she just wrapped her arms stubbornly around Naruto's torso to hold him down. Damn it. Shika, get her off before someone comes around here and sees this. No response, Shika. Naruto managed to turn his head enough to see Shikamaru asleep against the tree. Fine. He eventually conceded, shutting his eyes and using his arms as a pillow for his head. Team 10 had to be the laziest collective team that Konoha had to offer. And for the most part they seemed to be okay with that. Sometime later, elsewhere in Konoha. As he stood crouched on a roof with a great vantage point, Jiraiya chuckled lecherously with a telescope up to one of his eyes as he spied right into a woman's side of the hot springs. Kami, I love this village so much. You just don't get this quality of open air peeping anywhere else in the world. Should I be worried about you passing these pervert trait on down the line or what? Upon hearing the voice of his female teammate behind him, Jiraiya still didn't lower his spying glass. If she hadn't outright punted him into the hot springs yet then she probably wasn't going to, no. And if you're talking about the brat he has enough pervert in him without me trying to do anything. You should see the first jutsu he made Tsunade Hime. It's a thing of beauty. He summoned Gamabunta not too long ago. Tsunade informed him, I'm guessing that you're the one responsible for that since you're the only one that can call on the moody frog. Toad actually. You know that. Jiraiya corrected, and yes I did. I figured if anyone had a right to sign it would be him. It was then that he put the scope up and turned to face her. So to what do I owe the pleasure of basking in your luscious presence? I will hurt you, you know. Tsunade informed him after his last comment, "Don't get too fresh, jackass. I was wondering when you planned on setting out again." She noticed the frown on Jiraiya's face and smirked, "Oh come on. You had to know that I wasn't going to stay here forever. There's no reason. You could take over for Sarutobi-sensei." Jiraiya offered, getting Tsunade to roll her light brown eyes at him, "He can't do this forever, you know. You're the best choice to take over." Letting out a laugh at the thought of being Hokage herself, Tsunade placed her hands on her hips to respond, "You're saying the same thing that Sarutobi-sensei's been saying since I've shown up. There's nothing you can say to me that I didn't already expect out of you all before I even came here. I want my money, and when I get it I'll be gone. I'm trying to sync it up for whenever you leave just for old time's sake, but there's no need for it, I guess." 2 months had passed since Tsunade's return after the Chunin exam's final round, and it still didn't seem like things were any closer to keeping her there. Shizune did a few things for the hospital and even took a mission or two in the meantime, but Tsunade simply didn't take part in anything one way or the other. All of this was driving Jiraiya to drinking, more than usual, like more than the amount that it takes to be fun. "There's no one else that can really do it," Jiraiya said, still barking up that tree. And still, Tsunade didn't wish to budge on the matter one bit. "Let one of the younger shinobi do it. There's got to be someone out there good enough to take the title. Like Kakashi, he's got the reputation, the references, and he's that good." "No, he's not," Jiraiya replied without missing a beat on that measure. "Sensei could more than likely still put Kakashi down, Sharingan or not. That whole 1000 jutsu thing doesn't mean anything when it comes to Sarutobi-sensei. I'm not too sure about his large-scale leadership chops either. He's good at leading teams, but, and other than him there isn't really anyone else close." "Then you do it if you care about it so much," Tsunade snapped, tired of the conversation. She was sick of the same old song and dance. Hearing about why she should be Hokage, about how Sarutobi didn't have that much time as leader left. If age was such a problem, then you should be taking this conversation to that old lawn no monarchy. Now tell me when you're leaving, or I'll just leave when the last bit of cash is dropped into my account." He wasn't meant to be Hokage, Jiraiya knew that much. He had his own roles to play, and Supreme Leader was not one of those roles. Tsunade had no such role, she was merely drifting about, and she could fill that spot. She knew that she was. He knew that she was. Everyone else did as well. But one had to realize that dealing with a Tsunade that was set in her ways was like engaging in trench warfare. You know what you're getting, that it'll be nasty business, and the most you can do is dig yourself in and prepare to butt heads until either one side or the other breaks down. I'll tell you when Tsunade Hime, but I still think you should consider it. You can keep running this topic into the ground if you want to, Jiraiya. You're going to get the same thing every single time from me," Tsunade said as she left Jiraiya alone once again. And for once he didn't particularly feel like peeping anymore. But he would gut it out and do so anyway. He had a responsibility to his legions of loyal fans. A few days later, mission assignment desk. Naruto, Shikamaru, and Ino walked into the office and right up to the first open desk that they could find, ready to get the whole show back on the road. At least Naruto and Ino were. Shikamaru had to be dragged from his home and more or less abducted to take a mission. But it had been more or less a month since they had worked together, with each member being busy with their own work, training, and whatnot more often than before, so none of them were really against taking another mission together. Marching right up to the desk with a confident grin, Naruto opened his mouth to ask for a mission the level that he wished it to be, which would have been B rank if Ino and Shikamaru didn't beat him to the punch as she placed her hand over his mouth and Shikamaru spoke for the three of them, "A C rank mission if you've got any." With a smile and a nod as Ino continued to hold Naruto's mouth shut, the man behind the desk handed Shikamaru a mission scroll with a C on it that he looked over before sighing and deciding that it was good enough for them, handing it off to Ino to look over herself. As the mission had been accepted, a sizable satchel was handed to Shikamaru that actually had the Nara clan symbol on it. "Hey," Shikamaru said to the mission supply guy as he put the satchel in his backpack with his other supplies, "So is this job something you get in a rotation system or do you apply for it?" He had been looking for possible easy detail jobs in the village for a ninja of at least Chunin rank and this seemed right up his alley. Before he could get an answer, he found his ear grabbed by Ino as she dragged both him and Naruto out of the room and outside. Finally getting her to let go of them, Naruto took the scroll from Ino to read over it himself. "You guys suck. I wanted to try another B rank mission now that we know what can happen. All we've done for the last month is C ranks. And this is going to be another one," Shikamaru said as he waited for Naruto to read over their orders so they could prepare to leave. "Are we taking it, or am I just heading back home to get some sleep?" "We're taking it," Naruto confirmed, knowing that the act of going to switch out missions even if he had a problem with it himself was too troublesome for Shikamaru. It wasn't actually a bad mission at all as he was getting used to them by then. "So are we ready to go?" Everyone nodded until Ino reached at her arm warmers and noticed something off. "Whoops. I didn't bring my needle launchers. Can we swing by the shop really quick? I have some stashed there in case I get called out on an emergency." "Airhead," Shikamaru remarked, ducking out of the way of a punch directed at his head. "Fine. Let's go. I guess we can't have Ino missing a weapon in case we get jumped or something." "Yamanaka flowers. Soda Kigakuruha," Naruto said, checking over his own equipment so that he didn't go in half-cocked the way Ino was almost about to. "I've never been up there before. This should be fun, right?" "Fun like a hernia," Shikamaru replied, and by now Naruto was used to his friend's attitude about most things, that he didn't really care for them if they took any personal effort from him. That was okay, both he and Ino had enough enthusiasm for most things to cover for him. "You seem happier than usual." "I do?" Naruto asked, blinking curiously at Shikamaru's observation. "How can you tell? You haven't stopped moving since we started hanging out in front of the shop." It seemed obvious to Shikamaru to keep a tab on one's own physical motion at all times since it was too much of a waste to move for no reason, but Naruto always had energy to burn so it was a moot point on that front. "What's up with you?" Feeling that he had been caught, there wasn't any sense in keeping it under wraps anymore. "It's Takeshika," Naruto said as if that explained everything. Shikamaru gestured for him to continue and Naruto rolled his eyes before speaking with more enthusiasm than before. "Fuse from Taki. Maybe if we have some time we can see how she's doing after the exams and everything." Now that was something Shikamaru had neglected to remember and he went wide-eyed upon hearing Naruto's reason for being excited to be heading to Takigakure. "Phew? You mean the girl that almost ripped your head off during the exams? Why would you be happy to go see her? She was meaner than all hell." "She's not that bad." "Yeah, Phew kind of was that bad. But she was a Jinchuriki like him, and by the end he was certain that they had established some sort of rapport between them at the end of the exams. Better than Gaara. At least Phew didn't turn into an all-out Nanabe form. If she could even do that, why not? It's not like we know anyone else from that village." "Because we're not from that village," stated Shikamaru. While Konoha and Taki might have been loosely aligned, that didn't mean that their ninja were really friends with one another. Think about it like this, Naruto. We're allies with Suna and Taki, so that just means that we have our eyes on them and they have their eyes on us. Villages that we don't have alliances with, we aren't looking their way because we're busy looking at our allies. Does that make sense? That's stupid. That's because you're stupid. You're stupid. No, I'm not. I know. Ah, there you two are. The upbeat and foppish-sounding voice directed Naruto and Shikamaru's attention towards the same attendant of the daimyo that had dropped the news over to them on the offer of a job. Still apparently dressed in fine clothes on the dollar of the daimyo, he walked up to Shikamaru with a smile on his face. "I must say, it is difficult to find you ninja types. But I'm just here to follow up on the confirmation from your Hokage that you two will be accepting the job offer." Both Naruto and Shikamaru looked at each other before Shikamaru answered the man. "That's right. We're both in. Looking forward to it," he said in sort of a mumble, not actually looking forward to the new assignment at all. "Ah, when do we report, by the way?" "Well, that's also the reason I've come to inform the Hokage of the request for your arrival," the attendant said, seeming like there was nothing that could really irk the man. He just seemed like an inherently bright person. Probably why he was the one to do the legwork for the court's affairs like this. "Since you've both accepted with plenty of time to spare, you two have 3 months before your presence is requested. I hope that's not a problem." "No, it's not." Naruto said with a smile, the demeanor of the man from the capital rather infectious from his point of view. He liked people like this guy, we'll definitely be there. Splendid. Clapping happily, the man placed a hand on both Naruto and Shikamaru's shoulders. I'm looking forward to seeing how you two get results when you begin. Well, it's off to the capital for me. I'll be in touch with you both soon. Goodbye. Naruto waved at the man as he walked away, heading probably towards a gate that would take him out of the village and back towards the capital city. 3 months. Huh. Well, now that there was a definite time span as to when they would have to leave, it felt real. It was quite different to just talk about doing something. But after making a commitment and realizing that one would then have to follow through with the obligation, it was a strange feeling, like a mix of a hollow and a fuzzy scraping feeling in their bellies. It was hard to explain. And as they saw Ino come out of the shop with a smile on her face as she adjusted her arm warmers back into place, they both felt a sinking feeling to go along with it. Sorry that took so long. One of the others working their shift moved them from the front behind the counter to somewhere in the storeroom. So are we ready to go now? Yeah. Shikamaru said before swallowing a lump in his throat. Hey, we've got something to tell you. Oh, he was not looking forward to the reaction he was about to get once he told Ino about what Naruto and he had just been talking about, but it couldn't be put off any longer. Now that their future job was no longer just talk, it had to be brought forward to the light. Well, it can wait until we're on the road, can't it? Grabbing Naruto and Shikamaru's wrists, Ino started pulling them towards the northern gate before they could say anything else. Talk and walk, you know? We've got a 2-day trip to the border and we're late. Sharing uneasy looks between them, both Naruto and Shikamaru knew that this was going to be one long trip. Meanwhile, Chanokuni, Digarashi Port. It was not a good place to be at the moment. Digarashi Port had seemed to transform over the course of the month into a town under the control of Gato Corporation. They had bought up all of the open dockside property and had bought out some smaller businesses with prime real estate elsewhere in town. On the surface, to the untrained eye, it didn't look like much had changed, but to one that could see beyond, there were too many signs to count. The people didn't even seem to regard the rivalry between the Wasabi and Waigarashi organizations any longer as the major going on in the area. Even the two families themselves didn't seem to register their own feud any longer. As a matter of fact, many of the Waigarashi members could be found strung out on drugs outside of buildings and properties that were known Gato Corporation holdings. Damn it, it was like a cancer. And the Otagaku ninja that could be found freely around the town were another thing as well. Gato couldn't have had deep pockets enough that he was willing to part with the money to afford upwards of 150 ninja to run security for him. But then again, it was probably a hard-learned lesson from the way things fell apart in Nami no Kuni. This place used to be so nice. Asuma said as he breathed out the smoke from his cigarette. He was transformed into a nondescript merchant-looking man that lacked his normal features altogether as he sat in a cafe, well, nicer than it is now at least. In the seat across from him sat Kurenai, only her eyes weren't so distinct, nor were her clothes, and she was hung with shorter black hair. Not big stretches from their normal physical traits, but it was done so that they wouldn't particularly stick out or make it seem as if they were trying too hard. It's kind of scary, how fast things changed here. She said to Asuma as she took a sip of coffee. You reported that there was only one warehouse under their name. 1 month later and they might as well let Gato rename this town altogether. I heard he was planning on moving to an island not too far from here. Asuma said with a smirk at how their information-gathering mission had been going. He's been getting some liberties by greasing the palms of the minister of the Chanokuni daimyo. Got to love all of that money. Not really that important in the grand scheme of things, Asuma. Kurenai chided him quietly. What about that ninja that put your kids in the hospital? It was a kunoichi actually. Whatever, it's a general term. She grumbled in return, getting Asuma's smirk to widen. If they weren't in a public place, she might have had to sock him one out of principle. Didn't she take on all 3 of them and Naruto when he was using the you-know-what? Kurenai mused, and they had actually snuck about to see the site where the fight had taken place. It was part of the extra land that Gato had bought up, in addition to the entire stretch of street that was ruined during Asuma's fight against the 3 Fuma clan members. Is she here? I couldn't tell you. I never saw her. Asuma felt a little bit of a burning anger in him when he thought of how close Team 10 had come to being killed by Gurren, and he had never even gotten so much as a look at her. She wasn't a widely known shinobi as a description from the others bore no fruit, but apparently they were barely able to touch her. From the looks of the docks after he had gotten his team to safety, that in of itself was something completely alarming. With this nasty news of Orochimaru having some sort of tie to Otagaku or with the knowledge of his branding of Sasuke with the cursed seal somehow, this was getting exceedingly more important. They had to come back to Konoha with something concrete. The only thing keeping this A-rank mission from being S-rank was that the confidentiality of this mission was not paramount. Asuma and Kurenai just figured that they would learn more if no one knew anything, even of their presence. They had noticed many Oto ninja drifting in and eventually boarding Gato's ships to set out across the ocean. Had he really hired this new village to keep Gato Corporation's entire infrastructure secure, right down to every last transport ship? If only they had known where the ships were going, but that would have to be next. They had to keep another incident like Nami no Kuni from happening. There was no danger of that happening here. The people kept their full autonomy, and other than the filtering in of drugs that would have to be ended at some point, the corporation seemed to be leaving people alone. Once again, a hard lesson learned that he was seemingly not willing to repeat. The losses he incurred monetarily when he lost his entire foothold in Nami no Kuni was obviously not equal to the gains that he got from oppressing them. He would rather settle for just peddling his drugs and use this as a jumping point for heading out across the ocean, possibly to locate another place where he could actually get away with more illicit things. And with Otagaku or Shinobi on the payroll, there was a much better chance that he could do so more freely. The next ship isn't planning to stop here for another week, Kurenai said, bringing up the information on the shipping schedule that they had managed to filch. Should we just report back to the village now? Shaking his head in method to answering her question, Asuma figured that they had a lot of decent information, but as long as they didn't have a definite destination for most of these ships that seemed to be coming in and going out like clockwork, they didn't have enough of anything to make an actual fuss over, with the exception that one of their teams got pieced apart in this town 1 month ago and the fact that it was now teeming with foreign shinobi, but those shinobi seemed to be under contract to Gato Corporation. We shouldn't just hang around for a week waiting for a chance to get more, but we can't just leave either, Asuma said as he finished off his cigarette and put the butt out in the ashtray at their table. I'm for staying, at least for another day or two. What do you think? Your opinion counts too. While she could see where Asuma was coming from, they had obtained enough disconcerting information to warrant a follow-up mission at a later point. Kurenai did not have a habit of overreaching during her missions, and this would be another example of such. I think we should just go now while we're free and clear. I've got a team to get back to anyway. What, you don't like spending time away from the village with me? Asuma asked with a grin on his face as he reached for another cigarette while he waited for Kurenai to finish her coffee. Just the two of us? That's really disappointing, Kurenai. I like it just fine, she replied with a ghost of a smile on her lips, but I'd rather it be doing something relaxing instead of this. Still, I have my own responsibilities with overseeing the training and missions of the kids. We can't all have our whole team advance on their first try. Flattery would get you nowhere, with most people. But Asuma was not most people, and Kurenai wasn't the average woman to him, thus Asuma acquiesced to her desire to leave. It wasn't just his life he would be playing with in this instance. It would be hers as well. And he wasn't about to do that. All right. We'll head back home. But you definitely owe me. Name what you want. I'm sure we can work that out on the road back. Konohagaku no Sato, a few blocks from the northern gate. Well, this whole thing about telling Ino wasn't going very well. Every time Shikamaru tried to speak up on the matter, Ino told him to stop trying to get them to procrastinate anymore, that they had lost time to make up for. And Naruto couldn't say anything because Ino had somehow switched to dragging Naruto down the street by the back of his headband that was tied around his neck. This led to him being more or less strangled for the last 10 minutes on their way out of town. I can't believe we're this late getting out of town, Ino whined as she continued to drag her teammates along. Sakura's always talking about how this kind of thing keeps happening with Team 7's sensei, and I laughed at it. It's really not funny when it's us. And the fact that it was her fault that they were late to leave as well was pretty embarrassing. If they actually had a client they needed to meet upon leaving, it would have been positively mortifying. In this instance, the mission required them to head to Takigakuer in order to transport some ingredient from the Nara clan's stores that had been requested for some medicinal concoction. They weren't really a known village for their medical practices though, and the ingredient was more for something added into military rations pills. Whatever. It was purchased and was prepared for transport, and they were the ones meant to take it out. It wasn't like it was a transaction that hadn't been made hundreds of times before either. There wasn't really any need to scrutinize it from Shikamaru's viewpoint. Speaking of Shikamaru's viewpoint, I think you're choking Naruto to death, Ino. Shikamaru commented as he could see Naruto's flailing about begin to get less spirited as they continued to be dragged. You could at least let go of his headband. It's right around his throat. Paying her fellow blonde attention at this point as she wondered why he of all people had been so silent, Ino gasped and let go of her grip on the back of Naruto's headband, freeing him to stumble out, coughing and gasping for breath. Sorry Goldie-kun. Are you alright? She asked before laughing sheepishly when being fixed with a bit of a glare from Naruto. My bad. With the sweet oxygen filling his lungs freely once more, Naruto took some well-deserved deep breaths and finally got his vision from seeing double. I'm good. Yeah. I'm definitely good. Let's roll, you guys. You sure? Naruto's eyes were still darting around rapidly, though that might have been his brain adjusting to having air once again. This was the next to last person that needed his brain cells to die via oxygen deprivation of any sort. Yeah, let's go. Well, he knew himself better than anyone else, and that was all that mattered to Team 10. The sounds of a shamisen being played directed their attention to the roof of a nearby dango shop where they saw a girl with said instrument sitting demurely with her eyes seemingly closed and a smile on her face. She had long dark hair in a ponytail with a large light green bow tied at the bottom end of it. She wore an ornate dark green kimono with dark brown and black designs on it. On her feet she wore black sandals with dark green painted nails. After continuing to play, and upon realizing that she now had not only Team 10's attention, but the attention of everyone in the vicinity, the girl stopped and stood up. She was at least 3 years older than the younger ninja on the street, and around her waist she wore a white sash with the kanji for fire emblazoned on it. Without even opening her eyes or dropping her pleasant smile, she looked right at Naruto and Shikamaru. She seemed to stare for so long that Ino began to feel that there was something up. Can we help you? Ino asked the older girl on the rooftop that seemed to be sizing her teammates up. We were on our way out of town on a mission. Oh, I'm sorry. The girl's voice was absolutely melodious as if it were an instrument in of itself, and she had yet to open her eyes for one moment at all. I was just curious, you see. I've been doing my job for 4 years and it's been quite a while since anyone else has joined our little group. We couldn't wait for the point where you two were actually supposed to show up, so we decided to accompany Nobuyuki-san when he came to confirm your acceptance. Nobuyuki? Naruto said, squinting his eyes so that they were closed much like the girl on the rooftop. Who's that? That would be the older man wearing the robes that you two spoke to outside of the flower shop. The girl explained, never dropping her smile for a second as she turned her attention to Naruto to speak to him. But then again, where are my manners? It's nice to meet you too, Nara Shikamaru. Uzumaki Naruto. My name is Suzukuro Kotoko. She turned her head around as if she were searching for something before eventually giving up. Sadeo-kun is around here somewhere. Oh, he'll turn up eventually. Why are you just here to talk to Shika and Goldie-kun? Ino asked. That's really weird. Weird. There wasn't anything weird about Kotoko's actions at all as far as she was concerned. Shrugging off Ino's comment, she strummed a few more notes out on her shamisen and spoke again. Now what in the world would be strange about coming to meet two people that are about to join your team? It just seems smart to me. Stop messing with the locals, Kotoko. Letting out a small laugh, Kotoko jumped down from the roof and landed right at the side of someone who was walking out, chewing on a stick of dango as he did so. He had short, brown hair with a white streak in it and a pair of small sunglasses over his eyes. He was slightly older than Kotoko and stood a head taller than Shikamaru and wore what looked like black monk's clothing as well as an identical sash to Kotoko's around his waist, white with the kanji for fire on it. I wasn't doing anything bad, Sadeo-kun. I was just here to meet the new guys. Kotoko put a hand on his shoulder and pointed over at Naruto and Shikamaru. See? They're right there. No. Seda said in a deadpan voice as if the answer were obvious, I don't see anything, ever. After a moment though his sunglasses-clad eyes turned towards the two aforementioned Konoha shinobi and his face seemed to take on one of consideration, Naruto and Shikamaru. Got it. I'll remember that. With that, he turned to head down the street only to be grabbed around the arm by Kotoko. Problem. Shaking Seda's arm, Kotoko pointed at the two male members of Team 10, wait, we're not going to test them or anything. When I first showed up at the capital I almost got a total beatdown. Seda shook his head in the negative, well we're not at the capital. We're in their village. Part of the guardsmen or not, it doesn't matter. We can't just start something just for that. It's not really in good taste either. Nobuyuki-san would be upset as well and we don't need anything negative trickling up any further than him, do we? So say goodbye to the new guys. We'll see them again soon enough. Bye new guys. Kotoko said, waving at Naruto and Shikamaru while walking away with Seidu, hope you don't get yourselves killed on whatever mission you're doing. We need more recruits because we aren't anywhere near 12 strong yet. Both Naruto and Shikamaru felt a cold, deathly shadow hover over the two of them, and it wasn't exactly Ino, yet anyway. It was merely the prospect of having to explain why exactly all of this had just occurred, as it would definitely not slip her notice that after a short while into the run-in with the strange pair of shinobi neither of them were very confused the way that she was. A short while later, roads of Hai no Kuni. So. The two males of the team flinched when they heard the sharpness of Ino's tone. This was not going to be a fun trip. Not at all. Is anyone going to tell just what the hell all of that was about back in the village? Or am I just supposed to be the odd man out here? You're a girl, Ino-chan. I know that smartass, it was a figure of speech. Ino snapped back at Naruto, bringing the team to a halt on the sunbathed forest path. Just what was that back there? You two didn't say anything. What was all of that stuff about you two being recruits or whatever? Who were those people? Well, it was time to let the chips fall as they may as far as breaking the news went. Not the place for it. But Ino was stubborn enough that she wouldn't let the topic sit. You saw the sashes that they both had on, didn't you? Shikamaru asked the glaring Ino, getting a stiff nod from her. Who else has one like that? Asuma-sensei. That much was easy. It was a marker of Asuma's past before his return to Konoha. He wore it prominently despite the fact that it had been 10 years since his incarnation of the 12 Guardian Ninja had met its end with the exception of two members, Asuma and a man that Asuma never particularly spoke of named Chiriku, so. This time Naruto spoke up, answering her question in his own way, well. I guess in a few months me and Shikamaru are going to be getting some sashes just like those. He saw Ino's eyes widen and her jaw hang slightly open and he flinched at the sight. Yeah, you've got it, Ino-chan. It's exactly what they're saying. It's exactly what you're probably thinking right now. Lifting a hand to point at Naruto and then at Shikamaru, Ino's face seemed to express her own shock at what they were, NT, telling her, are you two dopes telling me you're leaving? How dash? When dash? She didn't even know what to ask them first. I don't dash. Why would you go? It's not going to be forever, Ino-chan. Naruto was quick to make that point first and foremost. He was insistent on that being a factor the entire time, that he would get to return, that he was not going to be working as a guardsman forever, it was just supposed to be for a couple of years. It wouldn't be that long. That did not leave Ino feeling any easier than before. A couple of years? We haven't even been ninja for a full year yet. It's not even January. She shouted back at the pair of them, and you're both going? You both got invited to go and you're both taking it? What the fuck? She didn't want to blatantly say it aloud, but what about her? Just what was she supposed to do? She thought they were supposed to stick together. How were they just going to leave? And why didn't they bring this up to her when they were making the decision in the first place? The first she was hearing about it was when the decision was already made and two of the other ninja guardsmen came to Konoha to check them out firsthand. Trying to salvage the situation, Shikamaru was very grateful that at least this wasn't going down in public. She had a right to be upset, but trying to calm her down in front of people would not have been fun. It's not for 3 months. That's when we leave. It was what she had been afraid of after the exams ended. the team breaking up. Ino thought that bullet had been dodged. Yes, sometimes they worked apart, but they still trained together and did other things together all the time. That's no time at all. Ino said quietly, 3 months isn't long at all. You're telling me that by the end of January you're both going to be gone? And that's that. I was going to be leaving one way or another, Ino-chan. Naruto said with a shrug, deciding that he was all in from this point. Ero-sensei was going to get me to go with him on a trip to personally train me anyway. And then the daimyo offered me and Shikamaru this job and it fell into place to do that instead. Ero-sensei convinced me to take it, and Shika decided to come with me since he wasn't going to let me do it by myself. Someone has to make sure he doesn't blow himself up. Fuck you, Shika. Fuck both of you. Ino yelled at both of them, interrupting any banter that was about to occur. Now was not the time. She was far from pleased, and there was nothing about the situation that she could really take much solace in. You're both leaving me by myself on some buddy-buddy guy bullshit. What about me? Did I fit into this equation at all, or is it because I'm not the strongest? What is it? I know that Shikamaru is smart, and I know that Naruto is a Jinchuriki and he's only going to get stronger. I am the weakest one out of you guys but ... That was all that either of them wanted to hear as far as that train of thought meant. If you say you're weak then I'm going to have to ask you to tell Ino to come out from where she's really hiding. Shikamaru said, cutting her off from continuing on. Don't make it this way. This isn't about you at all. And right when he said that he could tell that something had gone wrong in translation. That didn't come out the right way. Even Naruto visibly flinched. If he knew that Shikamaru had said something stupid then it really must have been bad. Oh, I can definitely tell that much. Ino said frostily, turning her back on Shikamaru and walking down the path away from the two of them. Come on. I want to get a decent ways there before it gets dark. Ino-chan, wait. Naruto tried to grab a hold of her arm only for her to rip it out of her grasp. There's a pretty good reason why. Can't we just dash? I don't want to hear anything else about it you have to say. She replied, her arms shaking by her side before she stalked off down the road again. I thought we were close. But if this was going to happen then I guess we should have just split off after the Chunin exams after all, huh? The sound of her footsteps crunching leaves beneath her feet and the birds were the most audible thing around at that point. It would have saved you guys the trouble of ditching me later. No longer seeing fit to walk, she took off into the trees to begin moving faster. It couldn't possibly go this bad, could it? She didn't actually mean that. All they had to do was give her some time and then she would let them finish explaining why they were going. Ino was a smart and reasonable girl, and she was strong enough to deal without them. Everything would shake out properly in the end. So why did the two of them feel like crap? Come on, Naruto. Shikamaru said as he began walking ahead as well. We can't just let her go ahead by herself like that. Nodding in agreement, both Naruto and Shikamaru took off hot on Ino's trail, grateful that at least she wasn't trying to do something outlandish like outrun them. Shikamaru, she's going to let us tell her the rest of why we're doing this, isn't she? He didn't want to lose a friend over this. Especially not one as dear as Ino. For once, Shikamaru didn't really have an answer for him. Women were dangerous and mysterious as far as he was concerned, and this one was sufficiently provoked and emotional all by their doing. I hope so. I really do. 2 days later, vicinity of Takigakuer territory. Ino could seriously hold a grudge. It had to be obvious to them, because she had managed to keep an attraction to Uchiha Sasuke for well over 5 years while he showed no interest to the fairer sex and their affections for him. So 2 days was not going to be enough to allow her time to cool down, especially since she had to see them for every waking second of every day until then. Instead of yelling or being outright rude to them, Ino was merely quiet instead. Deathly quiet. She would not make eye contact with either of them, but when either Naruto or Shikamaru weren't looking they could feel her glaring into the backs of their heads. That wasn't even the worst thing about it though. On the first day after Ino took off away from them they finally managed to catch up to her and get ahead of her enough to move as a group again, but when they looked at her they saw her eyes were red and puffy. It didn't show on her face in any other way, and she didn't let even a single sniffle escape from that point forward, but she was hurt. Shikamaru was visibly rattled by the whole thing, as he had more or less had Ino in his life for as long as he could remember. While she always hadn't been as close as say someone like Chuji, she was still closer than most anyone else. He had never legitimately been on Ino's bad side before, and he wished that she would actually start yelling at them. He would have preferred that over the silence she had been giving them. Naruto took it worse than him, clearly. Any attempt to get Ino to talk, or even to acknowledge them beyond short, terse sentences on what to possibly look out for met with no success. He had never made anyone mad enough to stop being friends with him before. After he had formed his friendships, he managed to keep them no matter what, but one of his closest ones seemed to be on the rocks, to say the least. If this was what it was going to be like from one of his best friends, then did he even want to leave? What if others took it just as badly or washed their hands of him altogether? It wouldn't be worth it at all. Not for a few years to prepare for a nameless, faceless foe, and not for the boost towards becoming Hokage. But there was still work to do. Personal social messes aside, they were still in the field, and more importantly they still had no idea where Takigakure was supposed to be. Nobody outside of that village did. It was absolutely absurd how a village that had been around since the days of the original Hokage still had no outsider that knew of its location, the most prevalent reason that despite being surrounded on at least 3 sides by countries with other shinobi villages, they had never been successfully invaded. So they were traversing around the general location of a 30 kilometers radius of where Takigakure was supposed to be, looking for any sign of the place. Even using Naruto's exorbitant amount of clones bore no fruit. But it had never been invaded, so just using numbers to search obviously wasn't the answer. Moving throughout a heavily forested area that was not visitor-friendly, Naruto used his machete for what it was originally meant to be used for, clear-cutting a path. Damn, this place is wildery. What's with all of the overgrowth? I know that this place isn't into commerce like Konoha is because Shiho-chan made me learn that crap, but still. Taki really doesn't need people finding that place. Shikamaru said as he and Ino followed behind Naruto as he cleared the way. The one advantage they've always had in wars is that battles were fought on their terms, since no one could ever really bring the fight to their doorstep. Guerrilla warfare stuff, you know? I guess they have contacts in places for people to bring jobs to them and for requests like what we're doing to go out. This had been going on ever since they had arrived in that region of the country and had been hacking their way through the hard-to-traverse terrain. Eventually they came to a stop in a place with less overgrowth, at least less enough for them to take a break. Since the entrance seemed to be nowhere in sight, it seemed like a good time for a short snack to restore energy prior to heading out again. This is dumb. Naruto said as he bit into an onigiri prepared for a quick meal. It's like they don't even want this crap. What are we bringing them anyway? Reaching into his bag, Shikamaru pulled out the satchel with his clan symbol on it to show the others. I looked in it earlier. It's got powder from the horns of the deer in my clan and a lot of herbs, stuff that people can't get around here. They're the base for energy stuff. Why don't they just buy military rations pills from us and be done with it then? Naruto asked, getting a shrug from Shikamaru and a turning up of the nose from Ino that got him to frown deeply. He actually wished she'd just hit them and cheer up already. This was miserable. Hey, we're not lost, are we? He didn't think that he could easily find their way out and back to Konoha if it came to that. It would take a lot of running around. But that was not to be necessary as Shikamaru shook his head. No, I remember the way we took to get this far. I know how to backtrack us out. I get why you're asking that though. This is more trouble than it's worth. Going back home seems like the right option right now. Maybe then they'd do something productive instead of making the Konoha ninja team run around all over the place for nothing. The rustling of leaves got their attention and interrupted the snack and conversation at that moment. Naruto polished off the rest of his rice ball and held his machete up, prepared to fight as Shikamaru jumped up with shuriken at the ready and Ino had senbon prepared to throw. There's no need to attack anyone. From the brush walked a man with a sky blue flak vest and a Takigakure headband, calmly striding forward, even though this did nothing to take away the feeling of an ambush that Team 10 felt. His eyes looked the young group over before he spoke up again. There's really no need to be so defensive. We've been keeping a decent distance from you until we were able to determine that you hadn't located our village. A security measure. We're not here to fight. Ino said defensively, only for other Takigakuer ninja to pop up all over the area. So that ambush vibe wasn't too off. They were surrounded if nothing else. Well, we're not here to fight either. We're just here to give you your stupid raw materials and go home. Meanwhile, Naruto felt totally embarrassed. If he had been on his game, he would have been routinely feeling out to see if anyone was around. But he had been exacerbated by the terrain, he had been hungry, and he had been eating lunch. Just his luck that they caught him right then. That certainly didn't make him look very good. He would have liked to blame it on the whole Ino thing throwing him off of his game. But on this occasion at least there were no negative repercussions outside of a little bit of tension as Shikamaru held out the parcel that they had been transporting. So I'm guessing that you're not going to let us stop off at your village before we go home. That's right. The apparent leader of the Taki squad said as he took the goods from the young Chunin holding them. I'm sure you understand. We can't necessarily break our security protocol, even if you three have no ill intent, and I'm not claiming that you do. Even with the powers of that one. He said, shooting a short glance towards Naruto. Naruto was about to ask what the man knew about any of his powers, but he then remembered that the Chunin exams had been shown in many places and lots of people had seen the participants. No team fought more matches than his own, and Naruto hadn't been very discreet with his use of the Kyuubi's chakra in the final 2 rounds. And from what he already knew about how Jinchuriki were looked upon, it was quite evident that in this place sentiment for people like him wasn't exactly on the upswing the way that he could at least say it was in Konoha. Making the whole village look like world beaters on a major stage would do that for you. It was no skin off of his nose really. They could have been ruder about it, but it just went to show that the outlook of a hidden village didn't translate over to a hidden village's ally. Well, that was another damper on what was already a bummer of a trip. We'll have one of our ninja escort you a safe distance away to ensure that you don't follow us back to the village's entrance. The man said before calling out to one of the ninja that had them surrounded, Phew. This is your mission. Make sure these Konoha ninja find their way to the border safely. Hearing that Phew was among the shinobi around them, Naruto's eyes lit up and a grin sprang to his face as he actually saw the green-haired Jinchuriki walk forward out of the crowd. Phew. Naruto ran towards her, only to be stopped when she lifted her foot and planted the sole of her foot against his visage to stop him from getting any closer. That didn't stop him from speaking, albeit muffled with her foot stuck to his face. How have you been doing? Pretty much everyone in the vicinity felt the urge to face palm, and most did, Phew included, although the most she did was raise an eyebrow with an uncomfortable look on her face. I told you already, kid. No freebie hugs. And with a shove of her leg, she pushed Naruto back way further than she actually intended to do to her unconscious strength as the sound of Naruto's body being shoved through brush and leaves and the like. Oops. It took a second or two, but Naruto came running back into the area with foliage in his hair and stuck between his goggles, still grinning. I'm okay. Phew rolled her pink eyes and shook her head before turning her attention back to the captain of the squad. I'll take care of getting these guys out of here. You all can go home. Tell Shibuki I'll be back soon. The captain nodded but left Phew with a warning glance that she rolled her eyes at as the Taki squad vacated the area. When they were gone, Phew stuck her middle finger up in the direction that she figured they had gone off in and turned back towards Team 10. All got promotions, I see. Good for you all. So how've you been? Naruto asked the older female demon container. It's been a while. It was nice to see Phew's friendly, for the most part, face. It's been a while since I tenderized your face into a wall with my fist and you almost made me look soft in front of an entire arena. Phew returned before smirking when she saw Naruto balk at her recollection of their last run-in. Yeah, it has been. So what's up with you lot of runts? She saw Naruto walk closer and held up a finger in warning. Don't touch me. I kind of like you, little guy, but the next time you try any of that hug me crap I'm chucking you over the tree line. As Naruto slowly backed away from Phew, grinning nervously, Shikamaru spoke up for the lot of them since Ino was still playing the silent game. We've been better. Interest danced in Phew's orange orbs before just as quickly it was replaced by outright apathy. Yeah, talk and move. We've got to follow the asshole brigade partway there. They're going in the same direction. I want to catch up to them just to mess with them a bit. She said as she motioned for the three to follow them, which they did. Phew. The captain said in an exasperated tone of voice once she and Team 10 had caught up to them. what do you think you're doing? An innocent look was on Fu's face as the squad glared at her for her transgression, but it was obvious that she knew exactly what she was doing to mess with the lot of them. I was leading them away from the village, she said, trying to keep from snickering at the looks on their faces, unless you wanted me to lead them in the direction they were going in. But that was west. You don't want to drop them at Chuchi no Kuni's border, do you? So you figured you would just take them home in the proper direction? The Taki captain said dryly, running his hand through his hair as he knew that Fu was simply trying to res them, and it was working from the looks of the others. Just take them in the direction of Konoha so that we can head the rest of the way to the entrance securely. Fu gave the man a salute with a smirk on her face before leading Naruto, Shikamaru, and Ino on again. Once they were safely out of earshot, Fu began laughing to herself and spared a look back at the non-entertained faces of Taki's guests. Oh, what? I've got to take what I can get when it comes to this place, she said, swatting at an insect that had been buzzing around her face. Nothing's gotten any better? Naruto asked her with a raised eyebrow. I thought you were being nicer. I am being nicer. Fu argued back. I'm pretty sure Hooky would be attached to my hip right now if he wasn't still a genin. He likes me way too much ever since I've been actually trying to talk to him. She let off a scoff and pointed back over her shoulder. I've been less inclined to punt people that get too close to me by accident, and instead of just scaring everyone I'm lightening up. The only ones it seems to really be working on are kids though. Yesterday some little girl told me that I looked pretty. Laughs, can you believe that? Her tone was somewhat derisive, but from the serene look on her face it seemed like that meant a lot to her, and that much put a smile on Naruto's face. Fu really was a good person. A little rough around the edges, but that was just because of how she was brought up. Ow! Ino stopped jumping from branch to branch, getting the group to stop as she held her hand to her shoulder and moved it to show the crushed remains of an insect. Naruto jumped from his branch to Ino's and looked her over after her sudden cry of alarm. Ino-chan, are you okay? Almost forgetting she was mad at him for a moment once Ino looked up at Naruto's emotive blue eyes, she remembered that she was actually upset with him and Shikamaru and her tone turned frosty again. I'm fine, she said before looking at the crushed remains of whatever she had slapped on her shoulder. It was just a bee. Are we running near a hive of them or something? Fu asked with a hand on her hip, because I had to kill a few of them too just a while ago. Taking the initiative, Naruto formed the ram seal to gather his chakra more efficiently and released it outward as a sensor technique, Chakra Hankyuti to no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu. He then recoiled at the results of his scouting around. I don't think it's a hive. Why not? Shikamaru asked him before he got a good look through the trees and had to conclude the point. Oh. Never mind then. There were countless bees just floating in the air, seeming to stare them all down and wait for them to make another move. Bees didn't do that. Not wild bees, but thinking of a concept of tame bees just freaked them all right the hell out. I hate bugs, Fu commented, getting a nod from Ino in agreement before Fu seemed to hear a voice in her head, seemingly griping at her from the look on her face. Yes, that includes you too, you bastard, she said, seeming to talk to herself. The Nanabe more than likely after they took a moment to think about it. Still looking around with his brain moving at 100 miles an hour, Shikamaru spoke up, should we? I don't know, run. As if to answer his question, from their stingers, the bees fired them forward at the four ninja, forcing them to drop down from their branches to evade and run away as the bees went after them in pursuit. But due to Naruto's own alarm upon sensing the full scope of the bees that had them surrounded, he was unable to notice the man that had his presence cloaked, overseeing the scene. The camouflage technique fell to reveal a man standing against the trunk of a tree. He was rather burly and had thick black hair that almost looked like devil horns. He had a full beard and a calm look in his eyes to go with a purple cloak that fell over his shoulders, with black pants and a black long-sleeves shirt underneath. With the Taki squad. The bodies of most of the ninja sent out to retrieve the package from Team 10 lay on the ground, motionless and swollen with many bee stings on their bodies. Many bees were still crawling over the corpses as if they were just a normal part of the landscape. Their bodies weren't even cold yet. The captain of the squad, though, sat immobilized against a tree with his body completely covered in beeswax that kept him from moving or being able to break free. He was alive and well, though that was entirely by design. What do you want? You have the materials, you've killed my men. What are you here for? A bespectacled man with beady eyes and long blonde hair smirked down at the talkie captain. On his shoulders he had a light blue cloak with grey clothing beneath it. We don't want your useless materials. It's pretty simple. All we want is the location to the entrance of Takigakur. That's all. As if it were such a simple thing to hand over. That was right up there in vital information as far as the village's well-being went. The next thing to it would have been the hero's water, which was actually what the supplies from Konoha were meant to be added to in order to lessen the damage it did to one's lifespan. This was worse than that though. Heh. The talkie captain chuckled darkly, knowing the severity of his situation. His men were cruelly wiped out by those bees that these people summoned before they were aware that it was a coordinated attack. That's all you want. He said sarcastically, well, if you want to know how to get to Taki, I think the first thing you should do is just go to hell. From another side of the trapped man, a kunoichi walked towards the Taki ninja and put the bottom of her foot on his head. She had short brown hair, red eyeshadow, and wore a purple, red-bordered short-skirt battle kimono with long sleeves and the shoulders out of them along with black gloves, a yellow bow around her waist, and purple leggings. Hell. Listen up. Finding the location of your village would bring our clan quite a lot of lost respect back. Just because we know where it is doesn't mean we're going to attack it. It's just very significant information. A clan with no respect that uses bees to fight. The trapped captain said before something hit him as far as his train of thought went. Wait, bees. You're that clan that got torched by the Aburame clan when you tried attacking Konoha before, the Kamaizuru clan. He saw the anger in the pair's faces upon being reminded of their defeat from years ago, and you're an Iwagakure clan. There's no way you won't attack us once you get the information on our village's location. It had been Iwagakure's modus operandi to try taking down smaller villages to widen its influence. As an example, during the panic that had set off the Third Shinobi World War, Iwagakure tried to take advantage of it and quickly sacked Kusagakure, only to find itself in a full-scale battle of attrition with Konoha. From that point forward after the end of that war, the minor villages kept their eyes to the northwest to ensure nothing like that ever happened again. Listen, don't worry about it right now. The blonde man said, stooping down closer to the Taki ninja's level, an attack won't happen yet if you give us the information. And we'll let you live. That gives you plenty of time to go back to your village and tell them what occurred here. Feel free to. Feel free because it wouldn't really matter if Takigakur was prepared or not. They simply did not have the manpower to prevent any aggressive actions from Iwagakure if it came to a full-scale invasion. So giving the exact location of the village to an enemy force like Iwagakure would result in Taki's destruction one way or another. They didn't have any shinobi on the level of a Kage. Even with the hero's water being used by their strongest ninja they would not be able to match the might of a Kage. An attack won't happen at all. The Taki captain said before gathering all of his willpower and focus. The two Iwa ninja got away from him in case he had an attack he could use while bound, but it was not an action that was meant to threaten them. In one motion, the man turned his own head to the left with enough force to break his own neck and effectively commit suicide before he could be properly interrogated and tortured for the information. The Iwa kunoichi let out an angry growl and kicked at the deceased captive's dead body. So this is it? When no one from this squad reports back it's going to be known that something's up. She said, realizing that the village wouldn't be letting anyone in or out once such an alert went up. Hibachi. We can't return to the village with nothing. This is our chance to get things back to the way they used to be. The blonde man Hibachi didn't seem to be too concerned with the turn of events. What had been seemingly a breakthrough in locating a thorn in Iwagakure's side had turned into this mess of things. A mission on the brink of being botched. It can't really be helped, Suzumibuki. He said, kneeling down to make sure that the man was truly dead instead of just faking it. He's dead. So unless you can read a dead man's mind or interrogate a ghost I don't think we'll be finding anyone. The woman Suzumibuki had a deep frown on her face until she remembered the last few people that their bees had been keeping watch over. There was one more Taki ninja, the one that split off to lead the Konoha ninja away from the entrance. A look of realization came over Hibachi's face. Oh, the ones that Kurabaka tailed after to make sure they weren't trouble. Yes. Suzumibuki smirked. This mission isn't hopeless yet. All we have to do is meet back up with him and take things from there. Omaka, Training Day 6. Team 7 hadn't seen much of Sasuke since he had gotten out of the hospital post-cursed seal branding. It was actually really nice to see him in good condition before they were to go with Kakashi on a C-rank mission to capture a pack of wolves killing off farm animals in a nearby village. Still, Kakashi's warning from that morning stuck with Sakura and Chuji. Now remember, Sasuke has been with Anko for more or less the entire month, without me there since I'm still claiming responsibility for you two. So if he comes back a little off, just let it be for now. And definitely don't ask him about anything that he's been doing. Why? First of all, you would probably wish you hadn't if you did. Kakashi explained, finding this important enough to set his beloved book aside to explain this to them. Second of all, we don't need his mind wandering to whatever Anko's been subjecting him to for the last month. The boy has enough problems, and this probably just gave him a few more to go along with them. Kakashi-sensei, it couldn't have been that bad. Sakura said with her hands on her hips. And she potentially would have been correct if Anko were more normal, like her. Anko was not normal though, and the one short meeting that Sakura had seen Anko during the Chunin exams for did not fully express this. Whatever you say, Sakura. Dismissed Kakashi. If she was going to be like that, then she'd just have to figure it out the hard way. Oh, look. Here Sasuke comes now. And just as he said, walking towards the gate in his usual attire with his Chunin flak jacket on over it was Sasuke, hands in his pockets and looking as aloof as usual. And walking right there with him was Anko, just grinning away and waving at the rest of Team 7, "Hello Cyclops. Hello Cyclops brats. What a wonderful day, isn't it Sasuke?" she asked, planting a hand on Sasuke's head and messing up his cool. "Don't touch me." Sasuke grumbled out as Anko messed up his hair. The speed he walked away from her with on the way towards his teammates could have been construed as him sprinting away if one knew him well enough. Chuji greeted Sasuke with a friendly smile and a wave. "Hey Sasuke. How've you been?" Sasuke spared a glance at Anko, who was waving cheerfully at him. This forced a momentary chill to go down his spine before he got his composure back. "Fine. What about you two though? I'd rather hear about that." That was a strange sign. Sasuke actually wanted to hear about what his teammates had been doing. And he was doing all that he could to avoid looking at Anko for longer than 2 seconds. "What did you do to him?" Kakashi finally asked Anko, who seemed way too cheery for there to be nothing going on. "I taught him the error of his ways, Cyclops. That's all," Anko said, slipping behind Sasuke again before anyone else noticed, "and he learned that you don't need a seal of tainted power to beat someone's ass." She pat him on the shoulder despite Sasuke's growing ire at her presence. "I am going to set you on fire one of these days," threatened Sasuke to his superior as he glared up at her, Sherry non-active. He just wished that her eyes were open so that maybe he could fuck with her head, but she was really good at never making eye contact with him. It was completely annoying, count on it. "You aren't still mad that you almost had to Chidori your way out of that snake's belly, are you? I made him spit you out." That's it for part 18. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.